to promote economic growth and economic development. Remember, we tailor the strategies. We tailor this. Actually, I should have the diagrams open because, okay, remember, we tailor the strategies to each country's context. But let's look at the broad categories. There are trade strategies, which are used to address certain barriers, like not having access to international markets is one. Okay, that is so trade strategies. There is diversification, which is used to address an overdependence on primary sector production. Okay, there is social enterprise, which is used to address a lot of things like empowering the poor, not having access to development funds, and so on. There are market-based supply-side policies. Okay, this is from macroeconomics. There are interventionist policies, which are used to address low human capital and inequality. There is provision of merit goods. We'll talk about each in more detail. There is inward FDI by what we call MNCs, multinational corporations. There is foreign aid. There is multilateral development assistance. And then there's institutional change or reform. Okay, let's talk about each of them in more detail. So, trade strategies. Number one, import substitution. Basically, what you want is you want people to buy domestic alternatives to imports. How do you do that? You use tariffs on imports, and then you subsidies to domestic industry. Import substitution is a very common strategy, but it's kind of out of fashion now because it relies a lot on tariffs, which the WTO doesn't encourage. Another approach is to forget about imports and focus on exports, export promotion. Subsidies, instead of giving subsidies to domestic industries that replace imports, give subsidies to export industries, industries that are focused on exports. And the funny thing is, export promotion involves lowering tariffs. Because when you lower tariffs on imports, your trade partners are more likely to retaliate by lowering tariffs on your exports. So it's basically like a gesture of good faith. It's like, look, I'm going to lower all the tariffs that I have against your imports. I hope you do the same. Okay? And politically, that works. So export promotion and import substitution are often opposites of each other. Okay? A country can either take one approach or the other. Another common approach is economic integration. So poor countries can sometimes join trading blocs, create FTAs, common markets, customs unions, monetary unions, etc. What this does is it leads to more interdependence between them, more free trade between them, and more bargaining power at the WTO. Okay, so these are trade strategies. They're designed to boost trade. Okay, boost trade within the economy and between the economy and the rest of the world. Okay, so these are trade-focused strategies. The next one is diversification. This is used to address overdependence on any specific sector. Okay, so this can be done using subsidies or tax breaks for basically what we call infant industries, right? So say you are overdependent on exporting coffee, okay, which is great. Everybody loves coffee, but you need to diversify your economy. So maybe you can invest. The government can invest by giving subsidies in new industries. Maybe you can invest in your tourism industry so you can have a hustling, bustling tourist sector as well, right? Infant industries is a very important way to help diversify the economy. Dubai did a really good job at diversifying. They moved away from being over-dependent on oil exports of oil, by building a very, very, very successful airline, Emirates Airline, by turning Dubai into a logistics hub. Dubai is one of the biggest, most important ports in the world, and by having a very vibrant tourism industry. So now Dubai has moved away from its overdependence on oil. Social enterprise, encouraging social enterprise. Social enterprise is basically allowing for-profit businesses, so businesses that are trying to generate a profit, to focus on economic and social problems, right? So basically, you give local businesses the chance to focus on economic and social problems and come up with creative solutions that help address the environmental or the social problem while also generating a profit. Okay, so a lot of so entrepreneurs, for example, have created bamboo bicycles. Okay, bicycles that allow people to travel to work, to school, and whatever, but they're made from sustainable materials, bamboo, right? There's all sorts of, some people have created toilet paper that is made from completely biodegradable materials or recycled materials. So again, these are for-profit businesses. Okay, they're still aiming to generate a profit, but they're generating a profit while trying to solve some kind of economic, environmental, or social problem. Okay, so encouraging social enterprise, again, subsidies, tax breaks, and so on and so forth. Market-based policies like trade liberalization, so removing tariffs, liberalizing trade, privatizing inefficient publicly owned enterprises, deregulation, removing excessive regulations that make it really difficult to start businesses and to invest. These three are very will generate long-term economic growth. Now, remember, each of those will generate some kind of economic growth. But whether the growth translates to development depends on, as I said, these four words. Growth will translate to development if it's not jobless, not ruthless, not voiceless, not futureless. Okay? So keep all of this in mind. Any questions so far? Welcome, Talal.
Salam. Sorry for being late. I had a chemistry mock exam today, so
It's okay. Just make sure you watch the recording of the first part.
I will.
All right, interventionist supply side policies, okay, which also increase long-run aggregate supply. Remember, market-based and interventionist supply side policies generate growth, but they have different ways of doing that, especially redistribution policies. This really addresses the inequality barrier. Okay, remember we said inequality can be a barrier. Okay, so you can use a more progressive tax system, make your tax system more progressive. You can give more generous transfer payments like unemployment benefits, child allowances, poverty allowances, and so on. Raise the minimum wage. Okay, these are all redistribution policies that the government can use if economic inequality is a big barrier. Provision of merit goods, obviously, education, right? Improve the quantity and quality. It's not just quantity. It's not just building more schools. It's also improving the quality of education programs, okay? Subsidizing education, building better schools, providing schools with better technology, and so on and so forth. Health programs, obviously, the healthier a population is, the more productive, okay? This makes sense. If a population is healthy, it will be more productive. Low human capital leads to low productivity. Okay? All right. The next strategy is inward FDI, foreign direct investment. Basically, this works by attracting what we call multinational corporations. Okay? Corporations that are owned by, corporations that are based in a home country, and they have operations in many host countries. Okay, how can you do this? You can offer them tax breaks. Okay, you can offer them tax breaks. You can offer them incentives to make them come and invest. These MNCs will provide a lot of funds that will they will provide technical expertise, so it increases your own human capital. They provide funds for investment and so on and so forth. So by encouraging these MNCs, but also remember, MNCs have a track record of messing things up. They have a track record of taking advantage of relaxed environmental laws and causing environmental damage, of employing children in sweatshops, child labor in relaxed, like Nike, for example, used to employ children in small sweatshops, and the idea was that children had small enough hands they could sew the lining of the shoes, and then that when that was brought to light, Nike faced a huge backlash, and a lot of people boycotted Nike, and Nike had to really clean up its image. So that's inward foreign direct investment. Foreign aid, okay? Foreign aid can be humanitarian aid to address an emergency. It's immediate, okay? Or development aid, which is focused on what we call pro-development projects, okay? Like building schools, building clean water wells, building sanitation projects, building hospitals, whatever, okay? Sometimes foreign aid can be in the form of debt relief. So canceling someone's debt, a country's debt, is a form of foreign aid. Sometimes it comes from official government, so government to government, we call that official development assistance, or from non-governmental organizations, NGOs like Oxfam, Amnesty International, and so on and so forth, okay? There's also multilateral development assistance from the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. The World Bank focuses on projects for development, and it uses either loans that are very relaxed interest and relaxed payment terms, or aid. It channels aid, okay? The International Monetary Fund is more focused on countries that have budget deficits and balance of payments deficits. The IMF helps countries basically escape indebtedness. So remember, the World Bank is more focused on projects for development, while the IMF is more focused on helping countries escape deficits, whether they are budget deficits within the government or current account deficits. And then there's institutional change, improving access to banking, okay, by using microfinance. So microfinance is when you give very small loans. It could be something like $20, okay, to help people who are poor invest in something very small that could help them generate more income. So microfinance are really small loans that are given directly to people. Mobile banking has been also, so improving access to apps, okay, where people can transfer money, where people can save money, where people can this and that. Mobile banking is very important, especially when a weak banking system is a barrier to development. Increasing women's empowerment. Women are more likely to help their children with their homework, make sure they get to their vaccination appointments. In general, we live in a world where the bulk of parenthood, unfortunately, falls on the woman. So if you really want to invest in the children of the future, invest in their mothers. Forget about their fathers. Okay? So increasing women's empowerment. Reducing corruption. Corruption can be a huge barrier to growth and development. Okay? Think of the amount of money that is lost because it's used to pay bribes, or it's used to line up the pockets of government officials instead of actually being invested in pro-development projects. Securing property rights and land rights. If people feel that their ownership of the land or their property is secure, they're more likely to invest. Okay? Now, the strengths and limitations of each of those strategies. Many of those strategies come with opportunity costs, right? So for example, interventionist policies and provision of merit goods, there's always an opportunity cost. They're expensive, okay? Even focusing on paying back debt, right, comes at an opportunity cost. All of those strategies will come with certain conditions, okay? And all of those strategies, there will often be a long time lag because you cannot, okay, so remember, many of those strategies are long-term focused, okay? They are expensive, which means there's a high opportunity cost. There's always a catch, okay? So keep that in mind. All right, now remember, the last thing we need to know is basically the idea is that some economists have always said that it's the government's responsibility to generate growth and development. and that what we need is more government intervention. Many economists say that actually we should have less government intervention and rely more on free markets. Okay, now who's right? Well, they're both right. Okay, we should have a balance. Economic growth and development should be based, instead of either or, more government intervention, more free markets. Why don't we have a balance between free markets and strong government intervention, so that the free markets are not doing whatever they want and damaging the environment and exploiting workers, and that governments do not have too much power, that there's a lot of corruption, and we need a balance between interventionist and market-based. Okay, it's not either or, what's better or worse. It's we need both. There needs to be a marriage between the private sector and the government, and there needs to be trust, cooperation, a partnership. Okay, and this is really, truly the best way to generate sustainable growth and development. And we're done. All right, questions. We have time for questions.
I just had a quick question. I don't
Yes.
really understand the export substitution.
Well, that's because it doesn't exist. It's either import.
Sorry, I always get it wrong, and I did it wrong in the mock also. Import substitution and export promotion. I do not.
Okay.
It's two concepts.
So import substitution, you are basically trying to encourage your citizens to buy local instead of imports. You want to substitute imports for local alternatives.
Okay.
How do you do that? You put tariffs on imports to discourage imports, and then you subsidize any domestic industry that's offering to build an alternative. So say China wants to discourage Chinese citizens from buying too many German cars. So it can put tariffs on German cars and then subsidize, say, a Chinese industry that's trying to build a Chinese car alternative.
Okay, that makes sense.
Export promotion takes a different approach. Instead of focusing on imports, it focuses, okay, what can we export? We can export tourism, we can export coffee, we can export machines. All right, let's subsidize and focus on those exports, and let's lower our tariffs on imports so that our trading partners can lower their tariffs on our exports.
Okay.
Okay? All right, my
Thank
lovelies. Any other questions?
I have a question regarding
Yes, hello.
like inward FDIs. I remember like most of the summatives we did, they typically brought like inward FDIs and like their limitation with like filling up like too much land or like taking up land for like smaller developed countries. Could you like explain that to me? Because every time like it gets brought up, I don't know how to answer it properly, especially in the
So multinational corporations bring a lot of expertise, they bring a lot of money, and they invest and they create jobs. Okay, but at the same time, multinationals are often driven by cold, ruthless business people who don't give a shit, excuse my French, about the environment, who will break the law if they know they can get away with it, right? So my point is, if you really want to reap the benefits of multinationals, you have to give them incentives to invest and share their expertise, but also make sure that they're not getting away with exploitation. They're not getting away with damaging the environment. They're not getting away with, you know, those things that, because multinationals can sometimes operate in a country with this idea that they're above the law. Make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So there's always been, so remember, multinationals, yes, they create jobs, but sometimes a lot of multinationals, especially American multinationals, they're notorious for this. They will only create unskilled jobs, and then the skilled jobs, they will give them to Americans. They will actually bring Americans from America and give them the skilled jobs. Now that prevents the transfer of human capital.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so my point is, multinationals, when you rely on attracting multinationals, more foreign direct investment, you have to have very clear rules and guidelines for what you're going to tolerate and what you're not going to tolerate. Otherwise, they can end up damaging your environment, exploiting your workers, especially if you have loose, relaxed labor laws, getting away with tax evasion, not paying their taxes, etc., etc.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions, my friends?
Sorry, one more question.
Yeah,
Is
you don't
the
have to
next session?
apologize, by the way, Dave. We have time. Yep.
Oh, is the next session gonna be the one with like all the HL lessons or?
Yeah. So next
Oh,
week we're gonna do hopefully market power, so monopoly, oligopoly, all that fun stuff. And we're gonna do sustainable debt as the macroeconomic objective. And hopefully we'll finish the Keynesian multiplier and the monetary policy HL stuff.
all right.
Ideally, if I can finish all the HL stuff for micro and macro next week, that would be great. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. All right. I'm going to stop recording. It was a pleasure. I hope you enjoyed the session. Bye.